Okay.
Got it.
I am talking to Mike Nourse, who is both the Director of Education at the Hyde Park Art Center and also the former Executive Director and now the Chairman of the Board of the Chicago Art Department. So Mike, I would do a terrible job of introducing you. Would you introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, I'm an arts professional. I'm an artist. I moved here from Canada in the late '90s to try to understand this country that I had only read about and seen about in my media up in Montreal, and I've been here ever since, working as a teacher, working as a programs educator, programs administrator, and now director. And alongside my path of working for a few different organizations, as you mentioned, Chicago Art Department has been a passion of mine for the last 20 years, a pet project of mine that's grown into something pretty awesome.
Well, what we discussed before I started recording was that we'll ask a little bit about the Hyde Park Art Center, where you're Director of Education, and I should know what that means, but would you explain to everybody what that job entails?
Yeah, well, our education landscape at the Art Center is pretty big. We offer what amounts to about 200 different programs per year. And inside of the education department, we have a few different departments. So we have on-site programs, which we've done ever since year 2 of the Art Center's existence. So since 1940. We have programs that are for teenagers. We have programs that we do with schools. We have working artist programs. And I have staff that oversee all those, and I tend to think of myself as working for my staff more than them working for me. I do whatever I can to support them because they're awesome. They have great ideas and initiatives that I love to support. So it's a broad range of programming for people who want to grow as artists at all different levels. And that's exactly what attracted me to the Art Center almost 12 years ago, was the opportunity to kind of work at all levels with the arts, which is those are things that I had done, but in different pockets here and there.
Right.
And this was the first place I got to bring it all together.
Right. I appreciate your saying that you're there for and working for the teaching artists. That's our model here as well. And a lot of our teachers are your teachers.
Yeah.
As much as, I don't know, we're maybe 25, 30 miles away from each other, but your teachers are teaching here and our teachers are teaching there. So they're not yours, they're not ours. But
Oh yeah.
What is your season right now? You're finishing spring and going into summer?
We're finishing spring, we're going into summer where camps become really big. They took over the lion's share of what we do. They have historically. But at the same time, we're also pretty busy with a new initiative there called Open Arts. And Open Arts is the culmination of the last 4 or 5 years' work, both a campaign to generate support, but also a community effort to change and shift the way we think about programming at the Art Center. So what Open Arts means is there's an open tuition model where people can contribute what they want for courses, including nothing. So depending on where they're coming from, what their capacity looks like, they can give whatever they want. They can set the tuition rate. And right now, we just launched at a new level this past spring, Open Arts, where we're now offering close to 70% of all of our programs as Open Arts. Whereas the last few years, we've been piloting 2 or 3 per quarter to really understand the impact and gather data and understanding from our community. So lucky enough to have had a campaign that went very well and supports Open Arts and our open tuition model. So it's those are the 2 big things happening right now. We have so much, it's really kind of hard to pinpoint, but those are the big sort of umbrellas that we're, as a staff, pretty focused on.
Well, I went online and I was looking at that model, and I'm very envious. I'd like to get there too for people to pay what they can. We have never turned down a scholarship at the Art Center. We do have some generous donors, but COVID has reduced our education from 50% of our annual income to between 30 and 40%.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're still a little threatened. Did you have one underwriter, or this is just a campaign to set aside funding for this?
So the campaign itself was, I believe it was 4 years. It was a $16 million campaign.
Wow.
We were able to get to 17 million, which is incredible. Our development staff and leadership at the Art Center are just amazing. Um, but a portion of that, a quarter of that $4 million was actually specifically set aside for an endowment. And kind of the first of its kind for an organization like ours. What
Yeah.
this allows us to do is annually kind of draw from the interest on that endowment to offset the costs of our and the losses for our open arts programming. Because we did figure out that we get a certain amount of tuition donated. The data was actually fairly consistent over the last few years. So we were able to kind of predict what we'd be looking at for losses at a larger scale. And so the support, before it was called open arts, we called it for the last few years community supported programs. Um, Mostly because we really kind of saw them as programs that would only exist if there was support from across the community.
Mhm.
So it's the same thing here, even though the endowment from our campaign is really the cornerstone of how we're going to sustain the work. It's really a funding and supporting model that sees support come from a lot of different places, both foundations and board members, community members, students, people of all kind really have contributed towards this.
Well, it's enviable. Like I said, when I heard that you guys were doing it, it's a big risk, but it also gets people in the door. I know you fill classes at a time when it's been difficult to get people in for whatever reason. We have limited class sizes, in the size of the room because of COVID. We have some people who won't come because we're still insisting that people wear masks, and we have people who won't come, because we're maybe, we're going to go to masks recommended
Yep.
soon. So, for
Yep.
both ends. So COVID's been a challenge along all those lines, but, I don't know about you, but we can say we have never sourced a COVID, outbreak or anything here at the Art Center because we've taken the precautions.
Yeah, we've been very cautious. We've had incidents like probably everybody, but I think overall we've protected and our community has protected itself pretty well.
Yeah,
And we did pivot through the pandemic to develop something which we and a lot of other organizations have never done. We moved all of our programming online.
yeah,
We paid for all of our teaching artists' existing contracts. We actually gave out micro grants to all of our teaching artists to help them just pay some of the bills. And all of our online programs, because we had never done it, one of the things we decided early in the pandemic was not only were we going to move to online, but we were going to make those open arts as well. We basically said, look, we're still learning. We have no idea. We had never done this. So we're like, the experience is going to be a little bumpy for us and the students alike. So let's acknowledge that and meet in the middle, for a few different reasons. So we decided to make them open arts. That gave us more data over the pandemic to really understand. And I think that supported and kept our community together in a way that resonated. And when we were able to come back in a more fuller capacity this year, for example, by that time, I think our community had been waiting and really looking forward to it. So in spring, this past spring, 10 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago, most of our programs filled within 15 minutes of being on the website,
wow.
which we've never had that really happen. I mean, we've had versions of courses or programs on one-on-one basis, but yeah, that was a big thing. So, excuse me, we're actually managing right now, our strategy and approach for how we can equitably allow people, into open arts programs without taking spots away from other people. We're thinking about waiting lists and making sure that people don't put themselves on too many lists. So we're really kind of factoring all those things in to make sure that we can sustain this over time. We can accommodate new students coming in at a rate that we haven't quite seen, and that staffing, calendar, and space wise, our capacity is manageable. It's all learning. It's all learning for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've said it, and we did as well. We moved all of our courses online for a period of time, and first thing we had to do was teach the teachers how to use Zoom and adapt
Yeah.
and all, and it worked, and it worked out really well. We're going to keep some things online, of course, but I always said, if a creative organization can't come up with a creative solution to a problem, and who else can, right? So
Totally. And even before we taught the teaching arts, we had to teach ourselves and what this was. And so me, for example, I was like, what the hell is all this shit? Like, I don't know I don't know. Like, I was experimenting with lighting, with filters, with like anything to make the online engagement just, help that, so that people were like having fun with it, not so much weighted and feeling weighted down by the screen, which unfortunately can really flatten ourselves. I mean, I've seen that a lot, where the two-dimensionality of our meetings like this or discussions can sometimes lose the depth of who we are as people, right? And that was the biggest thing that I felt compelled over the course of the pandemic to try to address, and try to, if it's not levity, try to bring some accessibility or comfort with just the situation.
well, it also it forces new programming. Like we started, we have a great lawn outside, so we did late night at the galleries, where we'd have a musician come play, and people brought their dinner and their bottle of wine and sat on the lawn, and then we'd say, now you have access to the gallery at night, and which is
That's a
kind of
great
funny
idea.
because we're down the street from Ravinia.
That's great.
Yeah, and this program too, this Talking With, was started during this period, where we could record something, put it on our newsletter, and send it out to people who are sheltering at home or whatever. So
Yeah, that was actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because that was actually a big part of what we pivoted to as well. Was, we did have some teaching artists who were struggling with content. What am I going to teach? How am I going to, how much can I develop beyond this one idea that I have, or two ideas that we've talked about? And so at some point, with our teens actually, and then a couple other programs, older adult programming, we decided to support them, basically inviting guests, not unlike this, to just guest visitors. Let's come and talk, present your practice. Let's have discussions around how you got to where you're going and how that can apply to the people in the room. And those sort of regular check-ins had like really great impacts on all of us, because they not only like helped people continue to think about art and flex those muscles, it helped them kind of like combat isolation and just make sure that they were staying connected to people. And as a result, one of the things that we initiated last year, we have a staff-wide, organizational-wide equity initiative, where all of our staff members are on different micro equity groups, smaller groups that have specific tasks to them. And so, for example, the one that I was assigned to, along with Gregory Smith and Sarah McKissick at the Art Center, is what's called community feedback. And after talking through all these different ideas about how, let's do this with the community, let's have an event, let's a lot of great ideas, not bad ones. We ended up settling on one that was pretty simple, which was, why don't we just invite community members to have conversations with us once a week? We'll invite a different community member. We'll talk about where they're at. We'll talk about what their impressions are of the Art Center. We'll just have a conversation. Some people we might know well, others we might not. And we've been doing that for now almost a year, and it's been fantastic. And a lot of things have come from that we didn't realize. Like, oh, when we do this at the Art Center, or we leave a space looking this way, or we welcome people this way, it has this sort of an impact on people. And the same goes for like a lot of different parts of our community. So, in one case, we even had someone reach out to us who said they were concerned there was no art stores on the South Side, and they had just closed a Michael's not far from us, which is like a craft store. And that was the closest thing we had. And they were concerned. They're like, are you helping with this? Is the Art Center? We ended up meeting with them, inviting them to a community, one of these feedback conversations, had a talk with them for an hour. We ended up connecting them with Chicago Creative Reuse Exchange, CCRX, which is like a Barbara Kennan used to run Chicago Artist Resource. She gathers all these materials, basically organizes them in a warehouse space on the South Side, and then distributes them and really works to get them to teachers. And we ended up taking this community member with us on a field trip there. They ended up getting all these supplies, learning about this space, subsequently ended up doing work with us at the Art Center. Wow. So these conversations, although they were strictly innocent and just really designed to connect with community members around us, neighbors, they've all actually led to good stuff. So conversations probably ended up being one of the most important things for us over the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. and new programs sprang up in response. So I was reluctant to say one of the good things about COVID, I just don't want to use that phrase, but
Yeah.
for us, because we're a more suburban setting, there are so many people out walking that our gallery goers increased. All day we have people stopping in. I propped the doors open. I put a speaker out, to play music.
That's
I
great.
put chalk out so that people can, draw on the sidewalk, and we have more foot traffic in our gallery than pre-COVID. So
That's amazing.
yeah, there's some great benefits. Now, I said we would only go for 15 minutes. We've done 15 minutes, and we never got to Chicago Art Department. You want to just encapsulate what that's about and put a plug in for Saturday night?
Yeah, CAD is a place where we started this organization almost 20 years ago in response to the war in Iraq. And we had a lot of artists, and including myself at the time, who were really looking for a way to kind of say something about that. And so we launched a program. It's called Love It or Leave It at the time, 10 different artists responding to the war in Iraq. And that began programming of ours that were centered around social discourse and civic engagement from the arts, really. And it's kind of grown in different ways for 20 years. And currently we're a residency-based program on Halstead Street in Pilsen. Work with about 20 artists a year. And we have 3 galleries. We have a lot of partnerships and community support. And basically it's a learning lab of sorts that has allowed me and countless other artists to kind of explore what it means to learn in the arts and to engage with people outside of yourself. So public interaction, public engagement, neighborhood engagement, partnerships. And currently Carlos Flores, our program manager, and Vivian Haritos, our development manager, they, along with our board support, really help them support the artists that are both in residence and come and exhibit and partner with. And this Saturday, we have our first fundraiser since 2019, Crystal Ball, which is it's called Crystal Ball because basically it's been a project where every year we never know if CAD's going to stick around another year. And it's not a cynical thing. It's just a reality that, arts organizations, especially ones that are experimental like ours, you never know. So it's a night where we have like tarot card readings, crystal readings, we have other performances, certainly a silent auction, and food and drinks. It's a really fun time. It's an amazing space. We have 11,000 square feet, and inside of the Pilsen neighborhood. It's just one of the best events to have fun at. So
it's a great space. I got my tickets. I'll be there Saturday night, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm gonna end the recording because we're running over time for what we slot for this, but hang on with me for just 1 second once I stop the recording. But thanks, Mike, for first of all, for what you're doing at Hyde Park, for what you've done with Chicago Art Department, and I just always want to see what you're doing, and it inspires me to keep going. So hang on 1 second, I'll get back to you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, James.